Okay guys, so for today, we're finding the intercepts of an equation. So let's review real quick, what is an intercept? There are two types of intercepts, guys. We have the x-intercept, which is when it crosses through the x line, like here. When a point crosses through the x, that's called the x-intercept. Well, that means that the x is going to have a value, but the y is going to be 0. Because notice, when you cross the x, the y is not moving up and down. So that has to be a 0. That's the x-intercept. And when you want to find the y-intercept, it's basically the same thing, but backwards. The y-intercept, you're going to find the y. So it's when the graph crosses the y. Notice that the x is not moving left or right. So the x is going to be 0, but the y is going to have a value. So now that you know that, for example, let's go to the x-intercept. Now that you know that the x-intercept has a value, but the y is 0, we're going to use this equation. Where do you plug in the 0, guys? On the y, because you said the y is 0. So here we go. We have negative 5x plus 4. Remember, you're putting a 0 for the y, and that equals 20. Well, guys, what's 4 times 0? Isn't that just 0? Bam. So we have negative 5x equals 20. Once again, what did I say when you have number and a variable next to each other? It means multiplication. So what's the opposite? Division. And when we divide, guys, the x is left by itself. So the x is equals, what is 20 divided by 5? That's a 4. But what's a positive divided by a negative? That's a negative. So my point here, guys, my point is actually negative 4, 0. So in our graph, for the x, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, here is our first point. That's negative 4, 0. Now, let's do the same thing, but for the y. So we have negative 5x plus 4y equals 20. But what are we going to put on the x right now, guys? Exactly, a 0. So we put a parenthesis here. Guys, what's negative 5 times 0? You know it. Canceled. It's a 0. So we have 4y equals 20. Remember, when you have number and letter next to each other, we do the opposite, which is division. So my y is equal to 20 divided by 4 is 5. So we found our value for y. In this case, it's a 5. So my point is 0, 5. If we go back to the graph, look, when my x is 0, my y is 5. There's our second point. And our graph is going to look something like this. It's going to touch both lines. And there you have it. This is our line that connects the intercepts. And that's how you find intercepts in an equation.